Hey guys, it's Mark from Migraine Professional, and today we're going to be talking about what menstrual and hormonal migraines are and what we can do about them. So the first thing we want to understand is what they are. So menstrual and hormonal migraines are migraines, simply put, are migraines that are caused by the fluctuations in hormones throughout a woman's menstrual cycle. So between days 1 and 28, there are different levels of dominant and non-dominant hormones, and this affects how the brain functions, how the body functions, the different levels of other hormones in the body. As we know, everything in the body is connected, and so when there's these fluctuations going on, everything else is kind of affected. So what's important to understand is the differences between estrogen and progesterone throughout the cycle. So this is day 1, this is where you get your period, your first day of bleeding. This is the end of your cycle right before you start bleeding. So in the first half of your cycle, estrogen is really high. In the second half, progesterone is really high. What we want to understand is that any time that estrogen is kind of either really high or dropping really low, we want to be careful. So we want to smooth that out. We want to, if our estrogen is dropping too low, we want to talk to our doctor. We want to see if maybe sublingual estrogen is a good idea for us. And we also want to make sure that because progesterone is very protective, it's sort of like a mother hormone almost, it's very protective, it balances the effects of estrogen. We want to make sure that we have enough progesterone circulating throughout our entire cycle to balance out estrogen. So, as we know, the most common time to get a menstrual migraine is right at the end, right when estrogen and progesterone drop. We want to smooth this out, we want to support it. And so, the 4 factors that we need to consider, first are estrogen. Is our estrogen going too high or is it going too low? Do we want to support it? Do we want to help kind of bring it down? Do we want to modulate how much estrogen there is? Then progesterone. Do we have progesterone there? Is progesterone there and supporting it properly? Is it dropping off too much? Is our progesterone getting too low? And then testosterone. Testosterone has actually been shown in a number of migraine studies to actually help with migraines and headaches. So testosterone might be a good idea to supplement with, but of course you have to talk to your doctor as that's a hormone. And then glutamate. So glutamate, in the simplest form of kind of understanding it, something that everyone can kind of understand, glutamate is MSG, monosodium glutamate. So what we know is that MSG, it's one of the biggest migraine headache triggers because glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So it excites the brain. It creates a lot of, it is a natural part of brain function, but it's excitatory. So whenever our brain is sort of sending thoughts, creating patterns, sort of connecting neurons, nerve cells, then it's using glutamate. But when there's too much glutamate, because it's excitatory, you can actually get what's called excitotoxicity, where there's too much excitation in the neuron fatigues, and it can even die. But we want to be careful because glutamate spikes the same time that our progesterone and estrogen drop at the end of our cycle. So we want to be really careful because glutamate, having too much glutamate through diet or not having enough sort of hormones to help balance it out, enough progesterone, will kind of create issues. So a couple tips. Of course, we want to make sure that we avoid dietary sources of glutamate. So MSG, it's the biggest one, the most kind of well-known one, because MSG is a free glutamic acid. So it's absorbed rapidly by the body, it enters the bloodstream very quickly, and if we're susceptible, it can sort of affect us adversely. We want to make sure that we keep sources of that down, and we want to make sure that we keep, if we have a sensitivity to glutamate, we can also, it's often found in the same foods in high amounts, in the same foods as histamine and tyramine. So if we have a sensitivity to histamine and tyramine foods, we can also maybe look at glutamate. This may be an area to go to. Then we have oils. So one of the biggest kind of stressors to the thyroid, the hormones, the metabolism, and especially the brain is the cheap oils. So like vegetable oil, canola oil, soy, safflower, sunflower, these unsaturated oils that easily go rancid and they get oxidized, and then they're very, very pro-inflammatory, and they can create a lot of problems. On top of being generally high in omega-6, not as high in omega-3, which we need more omega-3 than omega. We are a balanced amount of omega-3 to 6. Then, estrogens. We want to know, are estrogens coming into our body artificially? Are we putting BPA, BPS, different types of foods that contain estrogen? Are we putting those into our body? Are those artificially stimulating our estrogen? And are we detoxifying estrogen? Is our body able to break down the estrogen that it's making or the estrogens that are coming in from the environment? So we want to make sure we support our liver, because the liver detoxifies estrogen. So our phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification pathways, they break down estrogen, so we want to make sure we support it with sulfur-rich vegetables. So the cruciferous vegetables, we want to make sure we use carrots, help a lot with estrogen. We want to make sure we use the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. That whole family is really rich in sulfur compounds and DIM, which helps the liver detoxify. And then, of course, we have our HPTAG axis. So our hypothalamic, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, gonadal axis. So this is a big axis that controls all the different glands down our body, and it's all intertwined. And really, I put this here so that we can understand that there are things that affect the body systemically that affect all of these, and it ends up affecting our hormones. So if our body is stressed, if it perceives that we're stressed, let's say from just being awake at night when our body thinks we should be sleeping, we're awake, it thinks there's something on, it thinks there's a stressor. If this happens day in and day out, day in and day out, if we're constantly switching sleeping patterns, if we're not getting enough sunlight, then our circadian rhythms, our 24-hour clock, gets mistuned. Our body thinks we're in some sort of stressor, something's going on. Like we know, night work, shift work is a carcinogen because of this giant systemic effect. It affects every cell in our bodies. It affects all of our hormones. So anything that affects our hypothalamus, our pituitary gland, our thyroid, remember our thyroid is our metabolism, our adrenals our fight or flight response, and our gonads, our sex hormones. Anything will kind of influence this entire picture and end up creating upsets in our hormones, upsets in our menses, upsets in our migraines. So you got to make sure that if you're not testing, you're guessing. So something like a saliva test for hormones or a Dutch test will give you a lot more information to what's exactly going on. What are the hormones doing? How are they being affected? What's too low, too high? What's the should be there? And of course, in the description, I'm going to link to the 5 most common mistakes of hormonal migraines e-guide. It's completely free, and it kind of goes through the biggest mistakes that I commonly see migraine sufferers make. And to kind of recap, it's important to make sure that your estrogen, your progesterone, your glutamate, your testosterone are balanced, and that'll ensure that you have good menstrual and hormonal health. And so let me know in the description below, what have you noticed has affected your menstrual or hormonal migraines? Do you get them? Let me know in the description. Thanks. Hey, it's Mark from Migraine Professional. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe in the bottom left corner so that others can find this information as well. If you want to learn more about migraines than you've ever known before and how to deal with them, make sure to go to our website. Thanks.